Harper Lane had balanced 100 angry customers with a smile, but she had never been accused of fraud in front of a bank lobby full of strangers, while a billionaire in a pearl-white coat demanded she be arrested like it was part of her morning schedule. "Call the police," Madeleine Royce said, her voice calm and lethal. "Now." The marble floors of Royce and Meridian Private Bank reflected the chandelier light like the building itself was wearing diamonds. People in tailored suits turned their heads. A woman with a designer handbag raised her phone. The security guard by the velvet rope took one step closer to Harper, like she might pull a weapon instead of a pen. Harper stood behind the teller counter with her hands spread open, palms out, heart thundering, cheeks burning. "I didn't do anything," she said, but her voice sounded smaller than the room. Madeleine's eyes never softened. "Then explain why my safe deposit box shows access. Explain why the contents are missing. Explain why your ID is attached to the log." Harper's breath caught, because she could explain it. She could explain that her badge hadn't left her lanyard. She could explain that the system log wasn't proof of a person, just proof of a code. She could explain that she'd been helping an elderly customer who couldn't remember his own PIN when the access supposedly happened. But the truth didn't matter when the person accusing you could buy the room. And the worst part, Harper recognized the key ring in Madeleine's hand. Not because she'd ever been inside Madeleine Royce's safe deposit box, because the key tag, faded and old, stamped with a number, matched the key Harper had found in her late mother's sewing kit 2 nights ago. A safe deposit key. A key her mom had hidden like it was dangerous. A key that suddenly felt like a target on Harper's chest. Madeleine lifted the key ring toward the light, like she was holding up a verdict. "Seize her," Madeleine said. The security guard's hand moved toward his radio, and Harper realized something in a flash of cold clarity. This wasn't about a missing heirloom. This was about something Madeleine Royce needed gone before anyone opened the wrong box. Can you imagine being publicly framed at your job, while holding the one key that could expose who's been stealing millions behind a charity's smiling face? If you're listening, comment where you're watching from. City, state, or country. Because this story is a slow-burn justice storm, and the payoff is going to hit. And if you want more long, cinematic stories where the powerful try to bury the truth and the overlooked end up winning anyway, make sure you're subscribed. Now let me take you back to how Harper Lane, a single mom with a tired smile and a steady work ethic, ended up in the crosshairs of a woman who owned half the skyline. It started with a funeral that didn't feel like closure. It felt like a warning. Harper's mother, Claire Lane, had been the kind of woman who fixed ripped hems for neighbors and brought soup to sick friends without telling anyone. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. She wasn't the type of person a billionaire would ever notice, but Claire had worked for years in the back offices of the city, quiet jobs, invisible roles, where she saw how money moved when it didn't want to be seen. Harper had never asked her mother about her work, not really. They'd lived in survival mode, the kind where you count your groceries in your head while you shop and pretend you're just being efficient. And Claire had always said the same thing when Harper got frustrated about life being unfair. "Light beats leverage," her mom would say, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "They can push you with power, but they can't push you if the light's on." Harper used to roll her eyes. Now those words would become the only thing that kept her from collapsing. 2 nights after the funeral, Harper sat on her apartment floor in front of an old cedar chest. It had belonged to Claire. It smelled like lavender, dust, and the past. Harper's 7-year-old son, Milo, sat beside her with his dinosaur pajamas and a bowl of cereal because Harper had forgotten dinner was a thing when grief was heavy. Milo nudged her knee. "Mom, are you okay?" Harper forced a smile. "Yeah, baby, just going through Grandma's stuff." Milo's face scrunched. "I miss her." Harper's throat tightened. "Me too." She lifted the lid of the cedar chest and pulled out folded fabric, a bundle of letters tied with string, a cracked photo frame. And then she found the sewing kit, an old tin box with faded roses on the lid. Harper almost closed it. Claire had always been protective of that kit, not because thread was sacred, but because it was private, like Claire's hands were the only place she let herself feel in control. Harper opened it anyway. Inside were spools of thread, needles, buttons, and a small paper envelope tucked beneath the pincushion. Harper's heart gave a strange, sharp beat. The envelope had her name written on it in her mother's handwriting. Harper's fingers trembled as she opened it. Out slid a brass key on a small ring, attached to a faded tag with a number stamped into it, 417. There was also a single slip of paper. 5 words, written in Claire's careful script. Don't sign. Don't panic. Find Hale. Harper stared. Find Hale. Hale who? Her mind flipped through memories like pages. Then it landed on a name she'd heard once years ago when her mother came home late and quiet. Jonah Hale. A man Claire had mentioned one time, as if testing the air around the name. He's the only one who reads what people try to hide, Claire had said. Harper had asked, is he a cop? Claire had shaken her head. Worse for them. He's an auditor. Harper's stomach turned now, remembering that line. Milo leaned closer. Is that a treasure key? Harper swallowed. It's a key to something. Milo's eyes lit up. Like a pirate? Harper almost laughed, but it came out broken. Something like that, she whispered. She tucked the key back into the envelope and slid it into her purse instinctively, as if her mother might walk in and scold her for touching it. Then she read the note again. Don't sign. Don't panic. Find Hale. It didn't feel like a mother's sentimental last message. It felt like instructions, and Harper hated the way her skin prickled with the sense that Claire had known something was coming. The next morning, Harper went to work at Royce and Meridian. She'd started at the bank 2 years ago after leaving a dead-end retail job that offered no insurance, no stability, no dignity. The bank wasn't warm, but it was steady. It came with a paycheck that arrived on time and benefits that meant Milo could see a doctor without Harper needing to borrow money from her neighbor. Harper wasn't naive about the place. It catered to wealth. It wore politeness like perfume. It smiled while it judged, but Harper could do polite. Polite kept the lights on. She arrived early, kissed Milo's forehead at daycare, and promised him she'd be there after work for their Friday night couch picnic. Pizza and a movie? Milo asked, hope bright in his eyes. Pizza and a movie, Harper promised. Then she walked into the bank, tied on her lanyard, pinned on her name tag, and stepped behind the teller line with her practiced calm. By 9:15 a.m., the lobby was full of soft conversations, expensive shoes, and people who didn't look up from their phones. Harper was helping a regular customer, Mr. Lasky, an elderly man who always smelled like peppermint and always apologized for taking too long. My hands don't do what I tell them, he said, fumbling with his wallet. It's okay, Harper said gently. We have time. She guided him through a withdrawal, printed his receipt, and handed him his bills. Mr. Lasky smiled. You're a good girl. Harper smiled back. I'm a tired woman. But thank you. He chuckled, shuffled away. Harper turned to grab a stamp from her drawer when she heard the sound that always changed the air. A hush. Not a normal hush, like people were listening. A hush, like people were making room. Harper looked up and saw the velvet rope near the private banking area shift as the concierge stepped aside. And then Madeline Royce entered. Madeline wasn't just rich. She was the kind of rich that made the bank feel like it belonged to her, even if her name wasn't on the building. Her hair was silver blonde and perfect. Her coat was white cashmere. Her earrings glinted like cold stars. She didn't hurry, because people like Madeline didn't live on anyone else's clock. Two men in suits followed, and behind them, the branch manager, Brent Klein, hurried like a man trying to please a storm. Brent's smile was too wide. "Ms. Royce, welcome. We're honored." Madeline didn't look at him. She looked past him, scanning the teller line. Her gaze landed on Harper, and Harper felt it, like a hand squeezing her throat without touching. Madeline walked straight to Harper's counter. Brent trailed beside her, face tight. Madeline set a small leather case down on the counter and opened it. Inside was a key ring, safe deposit keys, with a faded tag stamped 4 and 17. Harper's blood ran cold. Madeline's eyes locked on Harper. "You," she said softly, as if the word was a curse. Harper's mouth went dry. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" Madeline's lips barely moved. "You can start by returning what you stole." The lobby held its breath. Harper blinked. I'm sorry." Brent leaned closer to Harper, voice low. "Harper, just cooperate. We'll handle it quietly." Harper's pulse spiked. "Handle what? I don't understand." Madeline's voice rose just enough for everyone to hear. "My safe deposit box was accessed last night. The contents are missing. Your employee log shows your ID." Harper's hands went numb. "That's not possible," Harper whispered. "I wasn't here." Madeline's eyes were ice. "The system disagrees." Brent's smile faltered. "Ms. Royce, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. Harper is—" Madeline snapped her gaze to Brent. "Do not minimize this," she said. "This is theft." Harper's heart hammered. A woman near the waiting chairs whispered, "Oh my God, that's Madeline Royce." Someone else murmured, "That girl just ruined her life." Harper wanted to scream that she had a son, that she had daycare pickup, that she had never stolen anything bigger than an extra ketchup packet. But she didn't, because she knew how the world heard women like her in rooms like this. Madeline leaned forward. "You have one chance. Return it quietly, and I'll consider being generous." Harper's voice shook. "I don't have it. I didn't take anything." Madeline's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll learn what happens when poor people lie to rich people." Harper flinched, and then Brent did something that made Harper's stomach drop. He turned to the security guard and nodded. "Call it in," Brent said. Harper stared at him, disbelief burning. "Brent, please, check the cameras, check the system." "I didn't." Brent's eyes were apologetic in the way cowards are apologetic. "Harper, this is above us." Above us. Harper felt the room tilt. Madeline lifted her chin. "Seize her!" And the security guard moved in. That was the moment Harper realized her mother's note wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. "Don't sign, don't panic, find Hale." Harper's fingers curled under the counter until her nails pressed into her palms. She forced herself to take one breath, then another, and she did the only thing she could think of to keep the room from swallowing her. She said clearly, loudly enough to cut through the whispers, "I want the compliance officer present." Brent blinked. "What?" Harper's voice shook but didn't break. "I want Jonah Hale." Madeline's eyes flickered, just once. Recognition, not surprise, fear, and Harper caught it. A tiny crack in Madeline's armor. Harper's heart pounded harder, because if Madeline Royce feared Jonah Hale, then her mother hadn't sent Harper to a stranger. She'd sent her to the one person who could turn on the light. Brent laughed nervously. "Jonah Hale isn't. He's corporate. He's not." Madeline's gaze snapped to him. "Call him," she said sharply. Brent froze, then nodded too quickly, pulling out his phone. Harper's breath caught. Madeline turned back to Harper and smiled. A small, sharp smile. "You just made this worse," she whispered. Harper whispered back, so softly only she could hear herself. "Light beats leverage." While Brent stumbled toward his office to make the call, Madeline stepped aside like a queen granting a pause. The security guard hovered, waiting. Harper's hands shook as she reached for her own phone beneath the counter and texted her neighbor, Ms. Dottie Price, an older woman who watched Milo in emergencies. Emergency. May be late. Please get Milo if I don't make pickup. Dottie replied instantly. Got him. Hold on, baby. Don't let them move you. Harper's throat tightened. Don't let them move you. Same energy, same truth. Across the lobby, Madeline sat in a leather chair like she owned the building. Her assistant stood behind her, whispering. Brent paced near his office, and Harper stood behind the counter, exposed, watched, waiting for a man she'd never met to either save her or confirm her mother had been wrong. 10 minutes felt like a year. Then the bank doors opened again. A man walked in without spectacle. Tall, lean, mid-40s, dark hair, cut simple, no flashy suit, just a charcoal jacket and the kind of posture that came from being unafraid of powerful people. He paused at the entrance, eyes sweeping the room. Not the chandeliers, not the customers, the faces. He saw the security guard hovering near Harper. He saw Brent sweating. He saw Madeline sitting like a judge. And then he looked at Harper. His gaze held steady for one beat too long, like he was reading something behind her eyes. He walked forward. Brent rushed to him. Jonah, thank God, you're here. We have a situation. Jonah Hale didn't answer Brent. He walked straight to Harper's counter and stopped. Up close, his eyes were calm and sharp, the kind that didn't waste emotion. Harper Lane, he said, voice low. Harper swallowed. Yes. Jonah's gaze flicked to her name tag, then to her hands, then back to her eyes. Did you access Ms. Royce's box? He asked. Harper's voice trembled. No. Did you authorize anyone to use your credentials? He asked. No. Jonah nodded once, like he'd already believed her. Then he turned to Madeline. Ms. Royce, Jonah said politely. Madeline's smile was thin. Jonah Hale. Finally. Jonah's gaze stayed calm. Show me the access log. Madeline's assistant handed him a printout. Jonah scanned it quickly. Then he looked at the key tag in Madeline's hand. 417. His jaw tightened slightly. Harper noticed. Madeline noticed too. She leaned forward. It's simple. Your teller stole from me. End this. Jonah didn't blink. Nothing is simple when you're sure you're innocent. Madeline's eyes flashed. You're implying... Jonah held up a hand. I'm implying we do our job. We confirm. We verify. Then we act. Brent cleared his throat. Jonah, Ms. Royce is our highest value client. We can't... Jonah turned his head slowly toward Brent. The room got colder. You can, Jonah said. You're choosing not to. Brent's mouth opened, then closed. Jonah turned back to Harper. Step away from the counter, he said gently. But stay in sight. No one touches you. Understood? Harper nodded, heart pounding. Jonah lifted his voice slightly. Security, stand down. The security guard hesitated. Madeline's eyes snapped. No. Jonah's gaze stayed on the guard. Stand down, he repeated, and there was something in his tone that sounded like authority backed by consequences. The guard stepped back. Harper's knees almost gave out from relief. Madeline's smile tightened. You're protecting her. Jonah's voice was calm. I'm protecting the process. Madeline's gaze sharpened. You always loved process. Jonah looked at her without emotion. It keeps people from weaponizing panic. Harper's throat tightened at that. Weaponizing panic. That was exactly what Madeline was doing. Jonah turned to Brent. Pull the camera feed for last night. Pull the badge access logs for the vault corridor. Pull the system audit trail for credential entry. Now. Brent stammered. Our IT... Jonah cut him off. Now. Brent hurried away. Madeline's fingers tightened on her keyring. Even if someone spoofed the system, the contents are gone. Jonah's gaze flicked to her assistants. What contents? Madeline smiled, too controlled. Family items, private, Jonah nodded. We'll list them. Madeline's eyes narrowed. No. Jonah's voice remained even. Then you're asking for police involvement without documentation. Madeline's jaw tightened. The lobby watched like it was a live show. Harper felt her face burning, but she forced herself to stay still. Don't panic. Jonah stepped closer to the teller counter and lowered his voice so only Harper could hear. Claire Lane, he said. Harper's breath caught. You knew my mom. Jonah's eyes held hers. She asked me to watch for a box number. Harper's throat tightened. 417. Jonah's jaw tightened, confirmation flashing. Harper whispered, My mom left me a key. Jonah's gaze sharpened. Do you have it on you? Harper's hands trembled as she reached into her purse, still behind the counter, and touched the envelope. Before she could pull it out, Jonah shook his head slightly. Not here, he murmured. Harper swallowed. Madeline has the same tag. Jonah's voice was calm but urgent. Then your mother was right. Harper's heart pounded. Right about what? Jonah exhaled slowly. That someone would come looking for it, and that they would try to use you as the cover. Harper's skin went cold. Madeline, watching them, leaned forward. What are you whispering about, Jonah? Jonah turned to her, expression neutral. I'm reminding my employee of her rights. Madeline laughed softly. Rights? How adorable. Jonah's gaze didn't flicker. It's only adorable until it stops you. Madeline's smile snapped sharper. I built this bank's reputation. Jonah nodded once. Then you'll want the truth on record. Madeline's eyes narrowed and Harper saw it again. That tiny edge of urgency under the billionaire's calm. Because Madeline didn't want the truth on record. She wanted the box closed forever. A bank employee approached Jonah with a tablet. Sir, we have the vault corridor footage. Jonah took the tablet, watched for 10 seconds, then his eyes hardened. He turned the screen toward Brent, who had returned with sweat shining on his forehead. Explain, Jonah said. Brent stared. On the footage, at 10:47 p.m. the night before, a person in a staff jacket walked down the vault corridor. The camera angle was grainy, but the silhouette was clear. The person swiped a badge at the vault door. The door opened. The person entered. Brent swallowed. That's Harper's badge ID. Jonah's voice was cold. That's the badge ID, yes. Is that Harper? Brent hesitated. The lobby leaned in. Harper's stomach dropped. Madeline's eyes gleamed. There, she said, proof. Jonah paused the footage and zoomed. Then he pointed at the figure's wrist. A watch. A large-faced men's watch with a thick black band. Harper didn't wear a watch. Harper hadn't owned a watch in years. Jonah's gaze flicked to Harper's bare wrist, then back to Brent. Who on night staff wears that watch? Jonah asked. Brent's face went pale. Madeline's smile faltered for the smallest moment. Harper's heart pounded. Jonah turned to the lobby, voice steady. This footage shows a credential being used. It does not show Harper Lane committing theft. Madeline's eyes snapped. It shows someone using her badge. That makes her responsible. Jonah's voice remained calm, only if she willingly gave access, which is why we investigate. And until we have proof, no one arrests anyone in my branch. My branch. Harper's breath caught. Jonah was corporate. He didn't even work here daily, but he'd claimed the room. Madeline stood slowly, controlled rage under her elegance. You're stalling. Jonah nodded. Yes. Madeline blinked. Excuse me. Jonah's eyes held hers. You arrived with certainty. You demanded police. You refused to list missing items. You resisted documentation. You are pressuring the bank to act without verification. Madeline's mouth tightened. Because time matters. Jonah tilted his head slightly. Why does time matter, Ms. Royce? The room went silent. Madeline's smile turned brittle. Because my property is missing. Jonah nodded. Then we will secure the vault, audit all access, and notify authorities. Properly. Madeline's voice sharpened. I want the vault opened now. I want box 417 accessed, and I want you to show me what's inside. If it's empty, your teller goes in cuffs. Harper's blood ran cold. Jonah didn't answer immediately. He looked at Harper for a long beat. Then he said calmly, we can access the box, with witnesses, with recording, with chain of custody. Madeline's eyes narrowed. Fine. Brent swallowed hard. Jonah, we can't just... Jonah cut him off. We can. Get the vault supervisor, get the dual keys, bring the logbook. Brent looked like he might pass out. Harper's hands shook. Madeline's gaze flicked briefly toward the private banking corridor, like she wanted to move faster than the process. Jonah noticed. He said softly but clearly, no one leaves. Madeline's smile tightened. Are you detaining me? Jonah's voice remained even. I'm preventing interference in an active investigation. Madeline's assistant stiffened. Customers watched like this was theater. Harper's lungs felt too small for her chest, because going into the vault meant one thing. The box would be opened, and whatever Claire Lane had hidden behind number 417 would finally see daylight. Harper didn't know what it was, but she knew this. Madeline Royce was terrified of it, and that meant it was bigger than a stolen ring or a missing heirloom. It was evidence, and evidence didn't just ruin reputations, it ruined empires. They moved to the vault corridor like a procession. Jonah walked beside Harper, not touching her, but close enough that she didn't feel alone. Brent trailed behind, wringing his hands. Madeline walked in front like she was going to court, chin high, eyes sharp. The vault door was thick steel with a keypad and a badge reader. A supervisor named Lyle arrived, pale and nervous. Mr. Hale, what's going on? Jonah showed him the audit request. We're opening box 417 under compliance authority, full recording. Witnesses present. Lyle's eyes flicked to Madeline, then to Harper. Okay. Harper's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Inside the vault, rows of safe deposit boxes lined the walls like metal secrets. The air was cooler, drier. Madeline walked straight to a section on the right. She pointed. There. 417. Jonah nodded to Lyle. Pull the box. Lyle inserted a guard key. We need the client key. Madeline lifted her key ring. Here. Then she paused, like she was performing a moment of generosity, and handed the key to Lyle. Lyle inserted it. The mechanism clicked. He pulled the box out and carried it to the small table in the vault's center. A camera on a tripod recorded. Brent hovered, sweating. Madeline stood so still Harper could feel her control like pressure. Jonah looked at Harper. Are you ready? Harper swallowed. No. Jonah nodded. That's normal. Stay steady. Harper whispered, light beats leverage. Jonah's eyes flicked faint recognition. He murmured back, your mother said that too. Harper's throat tightened. Lyle opened the box. The lid lifted. Everyone leaned in, and Harper's breath stopped, because the box was not empty. Inside was a sealed manila envelope, thick, stamped with a blue notary seal. Beneath it was a small black flash drive in a clear evidence sleeve, and a folded letter, yellowed at the edges, with a single word written on the outside in Claire Lane's handwriting. Harper. Madeline's face went white. Not angry white, afraid white. Brent gasped quietly. What is that? Madeline snapped too fast. That doesn't belong there. Jonah's gaze turned icy. It was in your box. Madeline's voice rose. Someone planted it. Jonah didn't blink. We'll find out. Harper's hands shook. Jonah held up a hand to stop anyone from touching. No one touches anything until it's documented. Madeline took a step forward. That's my property. Jonah's voice was calm and dangerous. If this is evidence of fraud, it's not just property, it's a crime scene. Madeline's eyes flashed. You don't get to decide that. Jonah nodded slightly. A judge will, but right now, I'm deciding you don't contaminate it. Madeline's jaw clenched. Jonah looked at Harper, voice softening slightly. Your name is on that letter. Harper's breath shook. My mom. Jonah nodded once. Open it. On camera, in front of witnesses. Madeline snapped. No! Harper's eyes met Jonah's. He didn't tell her what to do, he just waited. And Harper realized something. All her life, other people had decided what she was allowed to know. Now the truth was sitting in front of her, addressed to her. Harper reached slowly and lifted the letter. Her fingers trembled so badly the paper shook. She slid her nail under the flap and opened it. Inside was one page, Claire's handwriting. Harper's vision blurred immediately, not from grief alone, but from the weight of what her mother must have carried. Harper began to read aloud, voice shaking because Jonah had said to do it on camera. If you're reading this, it means they've already tried to blame you. Harper swallowed hard. Madeline's breath hitched. Harper kept reading. They will use the bank, the badge, the rules, and your fear. Don't let them move you. Don't let them make you sign anything. Find Jonah Hale. Harper's throat tightened. Jonah's jaw clenched. Harper continued. Box 417 is not a treasure. It's a trap, set for the person who thought they could bury the truth. The flash drive contains the payment routing and signature cloning used to siphon funds from the Royce Children's Relief Foundation through shell vendors. The notarized envelope contains statements and a ledger that show who approved the transfers. Madeline let out a sound, small, sharp. Brent's face went gray. Lyle whispered, "Oh my God." Harper's hands shook. She forced herself to keep reading. If you're scared, remember this. Light beats leverage. Say it until it's true. Do not trust Brent Klein. He knows. He helped. And if Madeline Royce is in the room, do not let her touch anything. She will smile while she destroys evidence. Madeline's eyes went wide with pure fury and panic. Brent stumbled backward like the letter had hit him. Harper's voice cracked. My mom knew. Jonah's voice was steady. Yes, Madeline snapped. This is fabricated. Jonah turned to her. It's notarized documentation and a digital trail in your safe deposit box. That's not fabrication. That's accountability. Madeline's voice rose, sharp. That woman, your mother, was a bitter employee. She didn't understand. Harper's head snapped up. Don't talk about her like that. Madeline's eyes cut to Harper like a knife. She was nothing. Harper's hands clenched, shaking with rage. Jonah stepped slightly between them, calm but firm. Enough. Madeline's breath came fast. She looked at the box contents like she wanted to snatch them. Then she did something that changed the room. She lunged, not dramatically, quickly, efficiently, like someone used to getting what she wants. Her hand shot toward the flash drive. Jonah caught her wrist mid-air, not harsh, not violent, just stopping motion. Madeline froze, shocked. How dare you touch me, she hissed. Jonah's voice was quiet. How dare you try to steal evidence? Brent's voice jumped in, frantic. Jonah, please, let's take this upstairs. Calm down. Jonah didn't look at Brent. Lyle, he said, lock the vault door, call security, and call City Financial Crimes. Now. Lyle nodded, hands shaking, and moved fast. Madeline's eyes flashed with something ugly. You can't do this. Jonah's gaze held hers. Watch me. Harper stood frozen, letter trembling in her hands. The truth had just detonated inside a steel vault. And the person with the most to lose had just revealed she wasn't here for justice. She was here for control. While they waited for authorities, Jonah kept the envelope and flash drive on the table untouched. Harper sat on a small stool, trying to breathe. Madeline stood near the wall, controlled rage vibrating under her skin. Brent wiped sweat from his forehead, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Jonah leaned closer to Harper and spoke softly. "You did the right thing," he said. Harper's voice broke. "I didn't do anything, I just read." Jonah shook his head. "That's what they fear, not your hands, your voice." Harper swallowed. "Why would my mom put it in Madeline's box?" Jonah exhaled slowly. "Because if it was in an employee box, it disappears. If it was in a third-party box, it gets challenged. But in her box, it's locked to her. Chain of custody points to her. And if she claims it wasn't there, we still have the vault access trail." Harper's stomach twisted. "So my mom set a trap." Jonah's eyes softened slightly. "She turned their power into a cage." Harper's tears fell silently. "She was so brave." Jonah's voice was low. "She was terrified. Brave people usually are." Madeline snapped from across the table. "Jonah, if you do this, you burn everything. The bank, the foundation, the donors, the children." Harper flinched at the word children. Madeline's charity was famous. Billboards with smiling kids, galas with celebrities, speeches about hope. Madeline pointed at Harper, voice dripping contempt. "This is who you're trusting. A teller, a single mom, a nobody with a sob story." Harper's cheeks burned. Jonah's gaze turned to Madeline, cold. "She is a witness, and she is the reason your story ends today." Madeline's smile sharpened. "You think you're a hero, but you're an employee. You will be crushed." Jonah's voice stayed calm. "Light beats leverage." Madeline froze. Her eyes narrowed. "Claire said that." Jonah nodded once. "Yes." Madeline's breath quickened. "You're repeating her words like a prayer." Jonah's gaze didn't move. "Because they work." A heavy knock sounded at the vault door. Security. Then, minutes later, a woman's voice, firm and official. "Financial Crimes Unit, open the door." Lyle opened. 2 officers stepped in, followed by an investigator in a navy blazer with a badge on her belt. Detective Sloane Rivera. She looked like someone who didn't care about diamonds. She cared about facts. "What do we have?" Sloane asked. Jonah spoke clearly. "Evidence in safe deposit box 417 belonging to Madeline Royce. Notarized statements and a flash drive indicating fraud through the Royce Children's Relief Foundation, plus an attempt to frame teller Harper Lane via credential misuse." Sloane's gaze flicked to Harper. "You're Harper?" Harper swallowed. "Yes." Sloane nodded once. "You okay?" Harper's voice shook. "I don't know." Sloane looked at the table. "We seize the contents. Chain of custody. Everyone stays until statements are taken." Madeline's face twisted. "This is outrageous." Sloane's gaze turned flat. "Ma'am, I don't care how you feel. I care what you did." Madeline's voice rose. "My attorneys—" Sloane cut her off. "You can call them from downtown." Brent's knees looked like they might buckle. Sloane pointed to him. "And you are?" Brent swallowed. "Brent Klein, branch manager." Sloane's eyes narrowed. "You look like someone about to confess." Brent stammered. I don't know." Harper's stomach dropped. Jonah's voice was steady. "Detective, the letter states Brent Klein was involved and may have manipulated internal access logs." Sloane nodded. "We'll verify." Madeline's eyes snapped to Harper, pure venom. "You just destroyed a charity." Harper's hands clenched. "No, you did." Madeline smiled, cold. "Do you know what happens to people who embarrass me?" Harper's breath caught. Jonah stepped closer to Harper, voice low. "Hold steady," Harper whispered. "Light beats leverage." Sloane's gaze shifted between them. "Ma'am," she said to Madeline, "threatening witnesses is a great way to add charges." Madeline's smile faltered. Sloane turned to Harper. "You're coming with us to give a statement. We'll get you victim services if needed." Harper's throat tightened. "My son... I have to pick up my son." Dottie's text flashed in Harper's mind. Jonah said gently, "He's safe. Focus on this." Harper nodded shakily. As they escorted Madeline out of the vault corridor, the bank above had become a hive. Employees peered from behind counters, customers whispered, phones recorded. Madeline walked with her chin high, but the crack in her composure was visible now, because the light was on, and leverage doesn't look as strong in daylight. Over the next 48 hours, the story spread in layers, not news headlines yet, whispers. Madeline Royce was questioned at her own bank. Her charity is under investigation. A teller found something in a safe deposit box. And through it all, Harper sat in her small apartment with Milo asleep on her couch, staring at her mother's handwriting like it was a doorway she'd never known existed. Jonah called her twice a day, not with comfort, but with clarity. Detective Rivera confirmed the flash drive is legitimate, he told her. There are payment routes to shell vendors. Harper's stomach twisted. How much money? Jonah exhaled. Enough that Madeline will fight like a cornered animal. Harper's voice cracked. So she'll come for me. Jonah's tone stayed steady. Yes. Harper swallowed. I can't fight her. Jonah said, You don't have to fight her. You have to outlast her. Harper whispered, Light beats leverage. Jonah paused. Say it again. Harper blinked. What? Jonah's voice was low. Say it again. When you say it, you remember what you're doing. Harper's lips trembled. Light beats leverage. Jonah said, Good. Don't sign anything. Don't accept any settlement. Don't speak to anyone from the Foundation without counsel. And Harper, yes? Trust your steadiness, Jonah said. It's the one thing they can't buy. The first attack came disguised as kindness. On day 3, Harper's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something in her needed to know what the wolves sounded like. Harper Lane? A woman asked, voice smooth. Yes. This is Celeste Grant. I'm counsel for the Royce Children's Relief Foundation. Harper's stomach tightened. Okay. Celeste's tone was warm. Harper, first, I'm so sorry you were put in this situation. Harper swallowed. Thanks, Celeste continued. We believe there may have been internal misconduct unrelated to Ms. Royce, and you unfortunately were caught in the middle. Harper's hands shook. Unrelated. Celeste smiled through her voice. It's complex, but we want to protect you. We can offer you a generous severance, a non-disclosure agreement, and relocation assistance. Harper's heart pounded. Relocation, like she was the problem to move away. Celeste's voice softened. You have a son, don't you? Milo. Harper's blood went cold. How do you know my son's name? Celeste's tone stayed calm. We do our homework. We want to help you keep your life stable. Harper's hands clenched. What do you want? Celeste's voice was sweet. All we need is for you to sign a statement confirming you are uncertain about the origin of the documents in Box 4117, that you can't verify they belonged there, that you may have misunderstood your mother's intent. Harper's throat tightened. That was it. They wanted her to blur the truth, to turn light back into fog. Harper swallowed hard and heard her mother's note in her mind. Don't sign. Harper's voice trembled but stayed firm. No. Celeste paused. Harper. Harper said, I don't sign in the dark. Celeste went quiet for a beat. Then her voice cooled. That's not necessary. We're offering protection. Harper whispered, I already have protection. The truth. Celeste's tone turned sharper. Truth is expensive, Harper. People like you can't afford it. Harper's voice cracked. Watch me. She hung up with shaking hands. Then she texted Jonah immediately. They called. They want me to sign a statement. They know Milo. Jonah called within seconds. His voice was calm, but Harper could hear steel underneath. They're testing you, Jonah said. Harper's breath shook. They know my son's name. Jonah said, I'm filing for a protective order. And I'm moving you to a safe housing arrangement temporarily, you and Milo. Harper's stomach twisted. I don't want to hide. Jonah's voice softened slightly. It's not hiding, it's controlling the battlefield. Harper whispered, light beats leverage. Jonah said, exactly. That night, Jonah arrived at Harper's apartment with Detective Rivera and a victim advocate. Milo peeked from behind Harper's leg, suspicious. Jonah crouched slightly so he didn't tower over him. Hey, Milo. Milo blinked. Do I know you? Jonah smiled faintly. Not yet. But I'm a friend of your mom's. I'm here to help. Milo's eyes narrowed. Are you like a superhero? Harper's throat tightened on a laugh. Jonah glanced at Harper. Only in paperwork. Milo looked unimpressed. Paperwork is boring. Jonah nodded seriously. That's why it's powerful. Milo thought about that, then said, okay. They moved Harper and Milo into a short-term, secure apartment owned by the bank's corporate risk division, something Jonah had access to because he'd been preparing for this. Harper hated the idea of being uprooted, but she hated the idea of Madeline reaching Milo more. In the secure apartment, Milo found the couch and declared it the safe fort. Harper sat at the small kitchen table and stared at the letter again. Her mother had known. She had known her whole life could be flipped like a receipt in a cashier's hand, and she had prepared Harper anyway. The next week was a blur of interviews, statements, and verification. Detective Rivera confirmed the flash drive contained payment routing spreadsheets, shell vendor names, false invoices, digital signatures, approvals stamped with internal foundation credentials, and the ledger in the notarized envelope, it was handwritten. Claire's handwriting, it listed transfer dates and amounts plus a column labeled approved by Madeline Royce, Brent Klein, 2 foundation executives, a private accounting firm, and one more name that made Jonah's jaw tighten when he saw it. Elliot Vance. Harper frowned. Who's that? Jonah's eyes darkened. The foundation's independent auditor on paper. Harper swallowed. Independent? Jonah's mouth tightened. Independent the way a leash is independent from the dog holding it. Harper's stomach turned. So Madeline controlled the audit too. Jonah nodded. Your mother tried to change that. Harper's voice cracked. How did she even get this? Jonah exhaled. Claire worked contract admin for the foundation's vendor processing team. She saw invoices, she saw signatures, she saw money moved through children's programs that didn't exist. Harper's eyes burned. Why didn't she go to the police? Jonah's gaze softened. She tried, quietly. But when the people you're reporting own the building you're standing in, you learn to build your own evidence. Harper swallowed hard. A natural recap drifted from Jonah as he spoke, like he needed Harper to stay grounded. Your mom made copies, he said. She documented approvals. She hid them in a place Madeline couldn't deny without implicating herself. That's the trap. It's clean. Harper whispered, light beats leverage. Jonah nodded once. Yes, but Madeline wasn't done. On day 9, Brent Klein's attorney requested a meeting, not with police, with Jonah. Harper was asked to attend. Harper's stomach twisted, but Jonah said, we don't run, we document. They met in a neutral conference room downtown. Detective Rivera sat in the corner. A court reporter typed. Brent entered looking smaller than he had in the bank. He'd always been polished, confident. Now his suit looked like it didn't fit right. His attorney, a sharp woman with tired eyes, spoke first. Mr. Klein wants to cooperate. Detective Rivera lifted an eyebrow. That's a quick pivot. Brent swallowed. I didn't steal from the foundation, he said quickly. I just followed orders. Harper's jaw clenched. Orders, like he was a robot. Brent's eyes flicked to Harper, then away. Madeline asked me to handle security. She said there were threats. She said Claire Lane was unstable. Harper's throat tightened. Brent continued, voice shaking. She told me to monitor Harper. She said if anything went wrong, I needed to make sure the bank's liability was contained. Detective Rivera's gaze sharpened. Meaning blame the teller. Brent flinched. I didn't want to. Jonah's voice was calm and sharp. But you did. Brent swallowed. I didn't know Claire was Harper's mother. Harper snapped. You knew my name. You knew I was her daughter. You asked me about the funeral. Brent's face went pale. Harper leaned forward, voice trembling with rage. You smiled at me while you set me up. Brent's eyes filled with tears, but Harper didn't care, because tears didn't undo choices. Detective Rivera leaned in. Tell us about the badge spoofing. Brent swallowed hard. Kendall Voss, Madeline's foundation operations lead. She had contacts in bank IT. They cloned Harper's credential signature, not her physical badge. They used a night staff jacket to enter the vault corridor, to create footage that could pass at a glance. Then they planted the idea that Harper stole a missing item. Harper's stomach turned. Missing item? Brent nodded, miserable. They didn't know what they were looking for. They just knew Box 417 was dangerous. Jonah's eyes narrowed. Who told you 417 was dangerous? Brent hesitated. Then he whispered, Elliot Vance. Harper's throat tightened. The auditor. Jonah's jaw clenched. So the independent auditor warned Madeline. Brent nodded, shaking. He said a whistleblower left a dead man's box. He said if it opened, it would ruin everyone. Detective Rivera's voice was flat. And instead of doing the right thing, you tried to frame a teller. Brent whispered, I have a family. Harper stared at him. So do I. Silence. Then Brent's attorney spoke softly. Mr. Klein is prepared to provide full access to his communications and testify against Ms. Royce in exchange for consideration. Detective Rivera looked at Jonah. Jonah's expression didn't change. He simply said, light beats leverage. Brent flinched as if the phrase burned. Harper felt something inside her settle, not peace, but direction, because the puzzle was assembling. Madeline had built a fortress with money, but her fortress was made of people, and people cracked, one by one. The next crack came from somewhere Harper didn't expect. Milo's daycare called. Harper's heart dropped when she saw the number. She answered with shaking hands. Hello? A cheerful voice said. Hi, Ms. Lane. Just confirming Milo's pickup authorization. We got a request to add a family assistant named Celeste Grant. Harper's blood went ice cold. That's not authorized, Harper said quickly. Remove it, immediately. The daycare worker sounded confused. Oh, okay, it came with a signed form. Harper's hands shook. It's forged. Please put a password on Milo's file and call me if anyone asks again. Of course, the worker said, alarmed now. Harper hung up and stared at the wall. They were trying to reach Milo, not to kidnap him, to scare Harper, to remind her she was vulnerable. Harper called Jonah, voice shaking. They tried to add someone to Milo's pickup. Jonah's voice went low and dangerous. We're moving him to a different daycare temporarily, and I'm escalating the protective order. Harper's throat tightened. I hate this. Jonah said, I know. Harper whispered, I just wanted to work. I just wanted to go home. Jonah paused, then said something that felt like a hand on her shoulder without touching. They pick people like you because you have something to lose, Jonah said. That's not weakness. That's proof you're human. Harper's eyes burned. What if the light isn't enough? Jonah answered immediately. It is, but you have to keep it on. Harper whispered, light beats leverage. Jonah said, again. Harper swallowed. Light beats leverage. That was the second time she said it like it was oxygen. By week 3, financial crimes had enough to move. They froze foundation accounts. They subpoenaed the independent audit firm. They seized Madeline's emails and devices. And they discovered something that turned the case from embezzlement into something uglier. A side ledger, separate from the foundation, a list labeled Donor Influence. Harper stared at the printout Detective Rivera showed her. Names of donors, amounts, and beside them favors, zoning approvals, permit expedites, court referrals, media suppression. Harper's stomach turned. She was using the charity like a vending machine. Detective Rivera nodded. That's what power does when it thinks it's untouchable. Jonah's jaw tightened, and it explains why Claire was in danger. Harper's breath caught. Danger? Jonah looked at her, eyes steady. Claire didn't die of a random stroke, Harper. Harper froze. What are you saying? Her voice cracked. Detective Rivera's face was careful. We're not calling it homicide without evidence, but the timing is suspicious. Claire filed internal complaints. She collected documentation. Then she died 2 days after she requested an outside meeting. Harper felt like the floor disappeared. My mum, she whispered. Jonah's voice was low. She knew they might come for her. That's why she prepared you. Harper's hands shook so hard she couldn't hold her coffee. She whispered, light beats leverage. But this time it sounded like grief. Jonah's gaze softened slightly. We'll find out what happened. I promise. That promise became a new open loop in Harper's chest, one that didn't close until the end. The next big moment came fast. A preliminary hearing. Madeleine Royce's attorney filed motions claiming the evidence was planted. Claire Lane was unstable. Jonah Hale had a personal vendetta, and Harper Lane was a compromised employee. It was designed to shame Harper again, to make her feel small in a courtroom where money wore better suits than truth. Harper walked into the courthouse with Jonah beside her and Detective Rivera in front. Reporters waited, cameras flashed, and Harper's instinct screamed, run! But she didn't. She kept walking. In the courtroom, Madeleine sat with her attorney team like she was attending a gala. She wore navy silk, a gold pin shaped like a dove, the foundation's symbol, glinted on her lapel. Harper stared at the pin, anger rising. That dove had been printed on donation envelopes and billboards. It had been the mask. Madeleine looked at Harper and smiled faintly like she was saying, you don't belong here. Jonah leaned toward Harper and whispered, eyes forward. Harper breathed. The judge, Honorable Denise Markham, entered, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, unimpressed by elegance. Let's proceed, Judge Markham said. Madeleine's attorney argued, chain of custody issues, unlawful seizure, improper compliance overreach, unreliable whistleblower. He painted Claire Lane as a disgruntled clerk. He painted Harper as a pawn. Then Jonah stood. He didn't posture, he didn't perform. He laid out the facts like bricks. Box 417 was accessed with Miss Royce's key and the bank's guard key, Jonah said. Evidence was found inside under recorded procedure. The flash drive contains encrypted metadata tracing back to Foundation routing systems. The notarized ledger contains signature correlations and timestamps consistent with internal approvals. Madeleine's attorney scoffed. A handwritten ledger proves nothing. Jonah nodded. On its own, no, but when it matches bank transfer records, vendor invoices and email approvals seized under warrant, Madeleine's attorney snapped. Allegedly seized. Jonah's gaze didn't move. It becomes a map. Judge Markham leaned forward. And the attempt to frame the teller. Detective Rivera stood and submitted Brent Klein's cooperation statement. Madeleine's attorney objected. Judge Markham overruled. Harper watched Madeleine's face for the first time shift. Not panic, but irritation, like she couldn't believe people were disobeying her. Then Jonah did something Harper hadn't expected. He turned slightly, faced the judge and said, Your Honor, I request immediate protective orders for Harper Lane and her minor child. There have been documented attempts to falsify pickup authorization at the child's daycare and pressure Harper into signing statements. Madeleine's attorney snapped up. Baseless. Judge Markham's gaze turned sharp. "Is it documented?" Detective Rivera said. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Markham's voice was firm. "Granted. Immediate." Harper's breath left her body in a shaky exhale, because for the first time in her life, someone in power had used it to protect her, not to silence her. Madeline's jaw clenched. Judge Markham continued. "And regarding the Foundation assets, I authorize a freeze pending investigation." Madeline's eyes flashed. That was a blow, because money frozen is control interrupted. Harper's hands shook under the table. Jonah leaned toward her and whispered, "You're holding steady." Harper whispered back, "Light beats leverage." Jonah's mouth tightened in something like approval. After the hearing, reporters swarmed outside. Harper tried to keep her head down, a microphone shoved near her face. "Harper, did you steal from the charity?" Harper's cheeks burned. Jonah stepped forward. "No comment." Another reporter shouted, "Is it true Madeline Royce exploited sick children for money?" Harper flinched at the cruelty of the question. Detective Rivera moved them through. In the car, Harper stared out the window, shaking. "I can't do this forever," Harper whispered. Jonah's voice was steady. "You won't have to." Harper swallowed. "She'll crush me." Jonah looked at her. "Only if you let her drag you into the dark." Harper whispered, "Light beats leverage." Jonah nodded. "Exactly." At home, Milo ran up and hugged her tight. "Mom, are we okay?" Harper knelt, hugging him back, breathing in the safety of his small body. "We're okay," she whispered. "We're okay." Milo pulled back and looked at her face. "Did you win?" Harper's throat tightened. Not yet, she wanted to say, but she didn't, because kids needed hope. "We're getting there," Harper said softly. "We're turning on the lights." Milo nodded seriously. "I like lights." Harper almost laughed. "Me too." The turning point, the moment the case stopped being just an investigation and became a collapse, came from the least glamorous place. A storage unit. Detective Rivera called Jonah late one night. Harper was there, sitting on the couch in the secure apartment, half asleep, Milo already in bed. Jonah answered, listened, then his posture stiffened. He glanced at Harper. "They found it," he said. Harper's stomach dropped. "Found what?" Jonah's eyes were hard. "The missing contents Madeline claimed were stolen." Harper's breath caught. "Where?" Jonah exhaled. "A storage unit under Elliot Vance's name, the independent auditor." Harper's heart pounded. "So the box wasn't emptied by me. It was emptied by her people." Jonah nodded. "And the items include not just family heirlooms. There are hard drives, ledger books, and a second flash drive labeled cleanup." Harper's skin went cold. "Cleanup?" Jonah's voice was low. "They were destroying evidence." Harper's hands shook. "Does that mean charges?" Jonah nodded. "Conspiracy, obstruction, fraud, and something else." Harper swallowed. "What?" Jonah's jaw clenched. "A file labeled Lane." Harper froze. Her voice cracked. "My mom." Jonah nodded slowly. "Yes." Harper's throat tightened, panic rising. "What is it?" Jonah's gaze was steady. "We don't know yet. Rivera is getting warrants and extracting data. But Harper, this may answer your question about Claire's death." Harper felt like she couldn't breathe. She stood abruptly, pacing. "I can't." Jonah's voice cut through calmly. "Hold still." Harper stopped. Jonah said, "Look at me." Harper turned, tears already on her cheeks. Jonah's voice softened slightly. "Light beats leverage." Harper whispered, "Light beats leverage." Jonah nodded once. "Good. You're not alone." The next morning, Detective Rivera met them in her office. She looked tired, but focused. She slid a printed page across the table. It was an email. From Elliot Vance to Madeline Royce. Subject, Lane, problem resolved. Harper's vision blurred. Detective Rivera's voice was careful. This does not prove homicide. It proves they viewed Claire as a problem. We need more, but it's a significant piece. Harper's hands shook as she read the email. It referenced closing access, ensuring silence, avoiding external reporting. Harper's throat tightened. They killed her. Jonah's gaze was steady. We don't claim what we can't prove, yet. Harper slammed her hand on the table, anger exploding through grief. I don't care about yet. Detective Rivera's eyes softened slightly. I understand. But court cares, juries care. We build the light. We don't swing in the dark. Harper's breath shook. Jonah reached across the table, not touching her but close, and said softly, Your mother didn't build this trap so you could burn out. She built it so you could win. Harper swallowed hard. Detective Rivera continued. We have enough now to execute arrests on fraud and obstruction charges. Madeline Royce will be taken in, Elliot Vance will be taken in, and Brent Klein will be formally charged, though he's cooperating. Harper's heart pounded. When? Rivera said. Today. Harper's stomach twisted with dread and relief, because justice is satisfying. But it's also terrifying when the person you're taking down has spent their life never hearing no. They arrested Madeline Royce at a charity luncheon. Of course they did. Madeline had been on stage, smiling, speaking about protecting the future, a giant banner behind her with the foundation's dove symbol. The irony was so sharp it almost hurt. Detective Rivera later told Harper what it looked like. Madeline's smile held until the cuffs clicked. Then her eyes turned cold, not ashamed, not shocked, offended, like the world had violated her. Madeline asked, Do you know who I am? Detective Rivera replied, Yes, that's why you're in cuffs. The news finally exploded. And with it came the comment war of public opinion. Some people called Madeline a monster. Some people insisted it was political. Some said the foundation did good work and everyone makes mistakes. Harper didn't read much. But Milo's daycare teacher pulled Harper aside one afternoon and whispered, I'm proud of you. Harper blinked. Why? The teacher smiled. Because you didn't let them make you small. Harper's throat tightened. I almost did. The teacher shook her head. But you didn't. That night, Jonah sat at Harper's small kitchen table in the secure apartment, reviewing documents while Milo colored dinosaurs at the counter. Harper watched Jonah, trying to understand him. He was quiet, controlled, not the type to play hero. So why was he here late at night, protecting her like it mattered? Harper asked softly, Why did you help my mom? Jonah didn't look up right away. Because she helped me first. Harper frowned. How? Jonah exhaled slowly. When I was young, I worked a compliance case that almost ruined my career. I had evidence but no leverage. Everyone above me wanted it buried. Claire was the one person who copied a file for me and slid it under my door without asking for anything. Harper's chest tightened. My mom... Jonah nodded. She didn't like bullies. Harper's eyes burned. Neither do I. Jonah's gaze lifted to hers. Then keep doing what you're doing. Milo looked up from his coloring. Are you guys talking about bullies? Harper smiled faintly. Yeah. Milo nodded seriously. Bullies are dumb. Jonah's mouth curved slightly. Sometimes they're smart. That's what makes them dangerous. Milo thought about that, then said, Then you have to be smarter. Harper's throat tightened again. Exactly, Jonah said softly. The final showdown wasn't in a vault. It wasn't even in court. It was in a deposition room, sterile, quiet, where Madeline Royce finally had to answer questions under oath with nowhere to hide. Harper wasn't required to be there. Jonah suggested she skip it, but Harper said no, because if she didn't face it, the story would always feel unfinished inside her. Detective Rivera arranged it so Harper could watch from an adjacent room through one-way glass. Harper sat with a victim advocate, hands trembling, heart pounding. Madeleine sat at a table in a tailored suit, hair perfect, posture immaculate. Her attorney sat beside her, whispering. Across from her sat the state prosecutor and Detective Rivera. Jonah stood near the wall, silent, observant. The prosecutor began calmly. "Ms. Royce, do you recognize this flash drive recovered from your safe deposit box?" Madeleine smiled faintly. "I've never seen it." The prosecutor slid the notarized ledger forward. "Do you recognize Claire Lane's handwriting?" Madeleine's smile tightened. "No." Detective Rivera asked, "Do you recognize this email from Elliot Vance to you, subject Lane problem resolved?" Madeleine's eyes flickered, just once. Then she said, "I receive thousands of emails. I don't recall." The prosecutor leaned forward. "Let's simplify. Did you authorize shell payments through your foundation to vendors that did not exist?" Madeleine's voice was smooth. "Absolutely not." The prosecutor nodded. "Did you instruct anyone to frame Harper Lane to divert attention from Box 417? Madeleine's smile sharpened. "That's absurd." Detective Rivera's voice was flat. "Then why did you arrive at the bank demanding her arrest before asking for documentation of missing items?" Madeleine's eyes narrowed. "Because I knew." The prosecutor paused. "You knew what?" Madeleine's mouth tightened, realizing she'd stepped too close to truth. "I knew that something of mine was at risk," Madeleine said carefully. The prosecutor nodded. "What thing?" Madeleine's eyes hardened. "My private property." The prosecutor said, "If it was property, you would list it. You refused. Why?" Madeleine's jaw clenched. Silence stretched. Then Madeleine said something that revealed everything. "Because power is used to not being questioned, and eventually it shows its real face." Madeleine leaned forward, eyes cold. "Because I don't owe you details." The prosecutor let the silence sit. Then he nodded slowly. "That's the problem, Ms. Royce. You think you don't owe anyone anything." Madeleine's eyes flashed. "I built a charity that feeds children." The prosecutor's voice was quiet. "And you used it to feed yourself." Madeleine's smile disappeared. In the one-way glass room, Harper's hands shook. The victim advocate whispered, "Are you okay?" Harper swallowed. "I want her to say my mom's name." As if the universe heard her, the prosecutor turned a page. Claire Lane filed internal whistleblower complaints on May 12th, May 20th, and June 3rd, he said. You met with her privately on June 5th. 2 days later, she suffered a medical event and died. After her death, your foundation attempted to access daycare authorization for Harper Lane's child. Why? Madeleine's face stayed still, but her eyes hardened. "My charity has nothing to do with that woman's death," Madeleine said. The prosecutor asked, "Then why was there a file labeled Lane in Elliot Vance's storage unit?" Madeleine paused, and for the first time, her composure cracked, not into tears, but into anger. "Because she was a problem," Madeleine snapped. The prosecutor didn't blink. "A problem because she told the truth?" Madeleine's eyes burned. "A problem because she didn't understand her place." In the adjacent room, Harper's breath left her body like a wound. There it was, not an admission of murder, but an admission of motive, of contempt, of the reason Claire Lane had needed a trap. Harper pressed her hand to her mouth, tears falling silently. Jonah glanced toward the one-way glass, as if he could feel her. The prosecutor said quietly, "And Harper Lane? What was her place?" Madeleine's smile turned cruel. "Collateral." The word landed like a slap. Harper's whole body shook. Collateral, like she was an object, like she was nothing. The prosecutor leaned forward. "Do you know what collateral does in court, Ms. Royce?" Madeline blinked. The prosecutor said, "It becomes evidence." Madeline's eyes widened slightly, and then, in a moment that didn't feel loud but felt final, the prosecutor slid a new document across the table. A medical report, a toxicology addendum. Detective Rivera had been working the loop the entire time. The report showed something abnormal in Claire Lane's system, something that didn't prove murder alone, but raised enough doubt to justify charges and investigation. Madeline stared. Her attorney leaned in, whispering urgently. Madeline's jaw clenched. She looked up at Detective Rivera, and for the first time, her confidence faltered, because she realized the light had reached the one place she thought was forever dark. Harper's mother's death. The prosecutor spoke softly. "You had leverage, Ms. Royce, but now the light is on, and you don't get to turn it off." In the adjacent room, Harper whispered through tears, "Light beats leverage." It was the third time. This time it didn't feel like a mantra. It felt like justice finally landing. Madeline Royce ultimately took a plea deal, not because she felt remorse, but because her empire was collapsing too fast to control. She surrendered assets. She accepted prison time on fraud and obstruction charges. Elliot Vance flipped on higher-level details to reduce his sentence. Brent Klein lost his license and faced charges, though his cooperation reduced his time. The foundation was placed under court supervision. Programs were audited. Real children received real funds, at least for once. And Harper? Harper got her job back, offered publicly, ceremonially, like the bank wanted to wash itself clean. Harper declined, not because she wanted revenge, because she wanted a life that didn't depend on being tolerated by a system that almost crushed her. Instead, Jonah helped Harper transition into the bank's compliance training division, where she taught frontline employees how to spot credential manipulation, document threats, and protect themselves. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. One afternoon, months later, Harper walked into a small community center where a new financial literacy program was launching, funded by restitution money recovered from the case. Milo ran ahead, excited. "Mom! There's snacks!" Harper laughed softly. "Go get your snacks!" Jonah stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching Milo with a faint smile. Harper looked at Jonah, emotion tightening her chest. "I still miss her," Harper whispered. Jonah nodded. "I know." Harper swallowed. "Do you think she knew it would work?" Jonah looked at her. Claire didn't need certainty. She needed a chance. And she made one. Harper's eyes filled with tears. "She saved me." Jonah's voice was quiet. "She trusted you." Harper took a breath. "Sometimes I still feel small." Jonah's gaze held hers. "Small doesn't mean weak. It just means you learn to survive." Harper nodded slowly. Milo ran back up, cheeks full of crackers. "Mom, guess what?" "What?" Milo grinned. "I turned on all the lights in the snack room." Harper laughed through tears. "Why?" Milo said proudly. "Because lights beat..." Harper's throat tightened. Jonah smiled faintly. Milo squinted, thinking hard. "Leverage!" Harper knelt and hugged him tight, heart full and aching. "That's right," she whispered. "Lights beat leverage." "And before we close this out, I want to ask you something. Because your answer tells me what kind of person you are. If you found a key like Harper did, and you realized opening the wrong box could bring down someone powerful, would you open it anyway? Team, open the box. Or team, stay safe. And if you're still here, you're my kind of people. Hit subscribe for the next story, because the next injustice is already waiting for its light.